do you still remember how was the selection process to your master's? Maybe for somebody who might apply somewhere, will they give you a document, do a research analysis? What happens at your selection?
Yeah. So at the selection for masters, I still remember it very well. It's like
Wow,
it
that's
just happened
great.
like
That's great.
yesterday. So we had to write a research proposal.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I am so excited today. I will be talking about research psychology. I've been telling you a lot about it. I have my views which I've expressed on this channel, but I decided that today, let me bring you an expert in the field, a research psychologist, not just a newbie in the field, somebody who has been in the field for many years, Dr. Machimana. Doc, welcome and thank you for being here. If you can briefly just introduce yourself and just give us a bit of a background about yourself and where you come from and who is Dr. Machimana. Welcome and over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Seve. As you've already introduced me, I'm Nondumiso Machimana. I am a research psychologist and I work in the public sector. That's just basically who I am. I've been a research psychologist for over 10 years, as you've said, that I've got a vast knowledge in research psychology. And it really is a vast field, which I've thoroughly enjoyed. It's really, it gives me joy. I don't feel like I'm working when I do research.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that. And that's why I really appreciate your time and wanted to speak to you, because I think it's a field that has got challenges around it, particularly in terms of career opportunities and all that. So you definitely need somebody who has been in the field, particularly for a significant number of years as yours. But before we get into just a quick background, what did you study in terms of your foundational degree before you got into masters in psychology?
Yes. So I I have a diverse educational background. My first degree was in theology.
Wow.
So yes, I did a bachelor of theology, but I majored in psychology.
Wow. Wow.
Yes.
And where was that?
This was at Cornerstone Institute. Well, it's now called Cornerstone Institute. Back then, it was called Cornerstone Christian College in the Western Cape.
Wow, 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 wow.
Yeah, so I did that.
Interesting to hear.
So that's what I did in my first degree. And then honors, I then did that at the University of the Western Cape, and that was in psychology. And then at master's, I did research psychology because that's when you get to branch out. So you get your first degree. Like normally, people would do like a BA degree or a B Psych degree, and then move on to do, if you've done the BA, you then move on to do your honors, and then at masters, that's when you will then decide either you want to go the clinical route, the counseling route, or the research route. So that's basically how we get to research psychology. But look, other people may have taken different paths, but I think at the core, you must have that honors psychology degree and you must have done psychology in your undergrad for you to be able to be accepted into the master's program.
Yeah, no, true. And I was talking to you, I think, before the interview that we graduated roughly around the same time. And I remember during that time, there was a clear stipulation in terms of the scope of practice for psychology. One will easily see from the scope of practice what each profession does. I just want to find out from you, at what point did you come across research psychology and say, I want to follow that field? Was it a chosen field? Was it an alternative field? At what point did you decide this is my path?
Okay, so in terms of psychology, I've always wanted to do psychology, so that's what I applied for undergrad. So I specifically went to the institution that I went to because I knew that it offered psychology. So that's what I wanted to do. But I also wanted the theology part. I am a Christian, so I was really just interested and wanting to know more about the creator of the person. So before I get to know the person, I wanted
You're
to
like me. You're like me.
So I wanted to know the creator of the person as well. So that particular institution gave me a perfect opportunity to almost combine the theology as well as the psychology. And so I didn't know about research psychology at the time, but psychology was definitely what I wanted to do. In third year, we had a research module, and we had this research psychologist who actually taught the module. And we had to go and do like basic research. So we had to draw up a survey questionnaire and go and administer it, and then write a research report. He was so impressed with what I did that he actually used it to show the rest of the class that this is this is what I was looking for, because it seemed like the rest of the class didn't quite understand what needed to be done. And then he started talking to me about research psychology, and I had no idea what research psychology was about. And I started finding out, started researching around research psychology. And I think around that time as well, it was around that time when I knew for sure clinical wasn't for me, because we had started going into schools, going into hospitals, and doing a little bit of counseling, and I thought, this is not for me. This is really not for me. So I really enjoyed the research, and that's where I knew this is where I'm going to go.
Wow. I'm glad to hear that, Doc, and I think this is what I've been emphasizing in the past month, that one needs to really know themselves. And somebody was actually hearing me speak about the field of psychology, said he felt that I'm against clinical. I said, no, I'm not against clinical. I'm against the exaggeration of clinical psychology, or actually even accentuating it above other categories in psychology. But I think it boils down to what you are saying, that I think the more you know about the different fields and the more you know yourself better, you are able to actually choose the path that you need to follow. And I'm glad to hear that you chose it. It didn't choose you. And I'm happy that I'm actually having this interview with the person who chose the field. And I think it explains why you have been in this field for so long. And from your CV, it looks like you're doing well in it. So yeah, let me get into that. And so you went to do a master's in psychology, and did you do, people I know we speak a lot now, which was not common back then, about academic masters and professional masters, the one that allow you to register with HPSCA. So which masters did you do?
You have to do the professional masters in order to be able to register with the HPSCA. You cannot become a research psychologist without doing the professional masters, which allows you to then register, because then you register as a student in your masters. You're like every other specialization within psychology. You have to register as a student psychologist and then go and do your internship after that. And after the internship, only then can you then register as a research psychologist, because otherwise you then becoming a researcher. You cannot call yourself a research psychologist if you are not registered with the HPSCA. So you and there are many people who've done research and they are researchers, and unfortunately, even in the field of psychology, research psychology, there's a lot of people that study research psychology but decide not to register with the HPSCA. And even in that case, even though you have done a professional master's, if you are not registered with the HPSCA, you cannot call yourself a psychologist.
So in other words, So for a person who has a master's in research psychology but are not registered with HPSCA because they did an academic one, they in essence just have a master's in research psychology, but they can't call themselves research psychologist.
Yes.
Okay.
It's the same, I think, in every other field. You can go and do educational psychology, but so long as you are not registered, you cannot call yourself an educational psychologist.
No, you are totally right. I think there's actually a qualification like that you need. It's called a master's in psychology of education.
Oh, nice.
So people who do it are not necessarily educational psychologists, although almost every lecturer in that department is an educational psychologist. People who qualify, they just have a master's in psychology of education. Maybe because it's not a professional qualification. No, thank you for that clarity. And so when you finish now with your master's, and maybe let's get into the master's part. What do you then do at a master's in research psychology? I mean, I think almost every field in psychology, beside industrial and research, we see clients during masters. We have one-on-one session. We conduct the research. You know, there's a component of research, although percentage-wise is not as big as other components. With research psychology, what do you do at the master's level?
At a master's level, we do a lot. We also see clients, like you see clients, but of course, our clients are research participants. We don't call them clients. We call them research participants. So, but they are clients. It's just different terminology that we use. So, in our master's year, for example, we would do, depending on where you were placed and what you were doing. So we had projects where either individual projects or group projects where we would go into communities, either go into a school because we are conducting a study. I think the specific study that we were doing was around, I think, substance abuse or something. So we had to then draw up the survey questionnaires, go and administer, come back, capture the data, analyze, and then write a research report. And then we were doing we had other placements as well, where we could go and do either qualitative or quantitative data gathering as well as, and then we come back, we analyze. So it really is just different. So we are still going to clients, coming back and learning.
And you know, maybe also for clarity then, is there a particular focus in terms of the research that you do in masters compared to the one that somebody will necessarily do in education, majoring in research, or in any other field in research?
Yes, I think so, because our main focus is research. So we would do like your generic modules, like your health psychology, your community psychology, psychopathology, a bit of that. But our main focus is on research. So either what do I call it? Either the gathering of data or development of instruments for the gathering of data. So we literally sit and develop the instruments and go and administer them. And then we look, and a lot of the focus as well is on statistical analysis. So just using different statistical procedures to run analyses. So yeah, looking at broadly research. Which I know that the other fields will not necessarily be so focused on research. So for example, in my master's year, I had a qualitative and quantitative. So there's a module on just qualitative research methods where we look at a wide range of qualitative research methods. We look at quantitative research methods and the different techniques that researchers would use. in running statistics and in gathering the data. And yeah, so that's what our focus is on.
Do you have to do statistics at master's level?
Yes.
I get this question a lot, particularly for people like me who ran out of stats.
You have to you have to have a basic understanding of stats. These days, you don't have to necessarily do it by hand like you would do in undergrad, where you have formulas and you have to work it out by hand. We have programs that we can use. So you have to have an understanding of those programs. See, as a research psychologist, you must be able to gather the data, analyze it, and be able to interpret it yourself.
Okay. And when you spoke about you develop an instrument, so in quali, one will say that is easier to do, but in quanti, are you guys involved in being able to develop the constructs of a particular quantitative questionnaire, test its validity and reliability? And are you guys that involved, or you just want to basic questionnaire? How do you mean by that? Maybe just for clarity.
That's our field. That's our field.
Right.
It's really planning and developing and applying research across different fields. And part of what research psychology focuses on is psychometric development. And the bulk of what I do on a day-to-day basis is either the development of psychometry or the validation of existing instruments. So that's what you have to be able to do that as a research psychologist. So it doesn't matter which field you are in, whether you are working with an educational psychologist like yourself, we will then work with you in developing whatever measure, because we are specialists in researching about the construct and then coming up with questions, testing those questions to see if they actually work for that particular population. And then once we have established the psychometric properties of an instrument, so making sure that it's reliable, it's valid, it doesn't unfairly discriminate, then we are able to say, here's an instrument that you can use for measuring whatever it is that you want to measure.
Awesome. I want to ask you another question, but I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot.
Okay.
Will you, how will you describe the difference between what you guys do in terms of test development, and particularly for research, to what maybe a psychometrist is supposed to do? Ever thought of that?
Look, I'm not very familiar with the scope of practice of psychometrists, so I'm not sure at what point they.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Like, I'm not really clued up with the scope of psychometry.
Fair enough. Yeah. Okay. No problem. I think let's leave that. So you are done now with a master's. Where did you then do your internship?
I did it in the public sector. I did it in the Department of Defense.
Oh, in the Department of Defense.
Yes.
You are still there even today?
Yes, I'm still there.
Well, I know that you are in Department of Defense, but I didn't know that. Actually, maybe I forgot about that you actually did your internship. So you have been in defense since 2010.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, so take me there. So, and obviously, I don't know policies around the Department of Defense and all that. You'll share what you're comfortable with. So, what did your internship entail then?
Research. Again, it was research. It's looking at conceptualizing a research project, gathering data, analyzing data, writing reports, doing presentations, and then, yeah, That's that's what it entails. So we were doing a lot of the work that we were doing. We were working together with industrial psychologists because the Department of Defense, at least where I was working in the department where I currently work, is that we work alongside industrial psychologists um, with regards to personnel selections, development of personnel, and various other things.
So, so your job basically include development of instruments, conducting research, and who are you conducting it with?
Who am I conducting with? I'm conducting with my colleagues.
No, I mean, like, who are the participants? Is it like the people who work for the Defense Force?
Oh,
Guys
yes,
going
yes,
out
yes,
there?
yes, yes.
Who are the
So
participants?
my population group is the Defense Force.
Is it? Oh, okay. And so you did that, I think it took about a year. And what then? Where did you go? How was the work? How did you experience it? Did you try to leave defense? Did you apply somewhere?
No, I didn't. I fell in love. I fell in
Wow,
love with
wow,
Defense Force. And I never in my wildest dreams thought that I'll be working for the Defense Force. And I didn't even know half of what they do. And then when I started my internship, I really enjoyed what I was doing. I thoroughly just enjoyed what I was doing. And then I stayed on. And more than 10 years later, I'm still there.
wow, wow, wow. Please break it down. I hear people speak about, especially clinical. Most of clinical, they do the internship at 1 mil. And you are speaking about defense. There's a defense base somewhere there in Pretoria at that site, Fountain site. Are these different departments? Is there a huge psychology department there? How is it like structured in a way? Maybe for somebody who doesn't know anything about it.
Okay. The Department of Defense is huge, just like all the other departments, and it's nationwide. So um, we have different institutions and different bases. So, like you rightly said, some people go to one military hospital to do their internship, and those will be the clinical psychologists. And there's other places as well within the Defense Force where they can go and do their internships. And then we also offer, well, the Defense Force also offers internships for research psychology, for industrial psychology, as well as counseling psychology.
Is it? I didn't know they offer internship for counseling, industrial, and other fields. I thought it's only clinical.
No, no. So there's also research, industrial, as well as counseling.
Wow. And how does one get to know about the opportunities there in terms of the internship? I've got many students who would like to know.
We usually send out, or the department usually sends out. By the way, I am speaking just in my own capacity. I'm not speaking on behalf of the department.
No, sorry, I don't put you on the spot because out of curiosity, I know
Yeah.
somebody will be listening here asking me when we are gone. So,
so the department usually sends out application forms to the various institutions. So, for example, with the research psychology, we know that there's five universities that are registered with the HPSCA. So we will send out to the coordinators of those universities. And I think the same happens with industrial as well as clinical. So the universities will be informed, and then it will be the universities that will then circulate those application forms and those adverts. So, and that's how I got to know about it. I didn't know anything about the internship at the Defense Force, and then one of our lecturers circulated the advert and the application forms or something like that, and then we went in and applied.
Okay, no, awesome. For people who have research psychology academic, what are the opportunities that you might know of that are available for them, or what are the alternative career paths that they can explore within the field of research psychology?
Okay, research psychologists are everywhere. The other day, like I went to one of your interviews or one of your chats, and you were talking about clinicals being the god of psychology, and you were trying to dispel that myth. And I actually thought, I think psychology, research psychology, is the god of all professions.
Wow, wow,
Not
wow.
just research, not just psychology, because you need researchers in every field and in every sector and in every sphere. So yes, perhaps people are not necessarily employing research psychologists, but I think they are doing themselves a disservice, because so long as there's a human being, there's a psychological component that is happening. So be it in the health sector, be it in education, be it in mining, you will always need a perspective on the human and how the human is thinking, how the human is feeling, and why the human is acting the way they are acting. And this is where research psychology then comes in. And I think a lot of industries are perhaps just they're not clued up about research psychology. We don't advertise ourselves, I think, well enough, so that we can actually be seen and known, and people to see the value that we offer.
Yeah, look, I'm clueless about research psychology. Besides the fact that I know people who have done it, end up leaving it for whatever reason. And I told you before the interview that I don't see as many jobs in the field for research psychology. But even the one that you see, you find that not restrictive to HPSCA registration. And that's why I wanted to ask you, because I'm thinking maybe you guys meet or talk somewhere. Why is it that research psychology doesn't have that, for lack of better word, attractive factor or popularity or interest? And I'm saying that because I was busy with the research recently, speaking to the different institutes. I wanted to know how many people they enroll for research psychology. And the numbers are appalling. I think the lowest you will get in any category will be 100 applications. But the highest I saw, I think, was UCT, where they invited about 60 applicants and only 35 accepted their acceptance. And the same almost across, And I wanted to find out, and I told you before that I tried to convince somebody that there's a hope for research psychology. It's what you do with it. You need to make it, to pave your own career. It's not going to go there, look for you. But I'm not the best to speak about it. So I rely on you. Can you just maybe share a bit about that? Because there's somebody now caught in research, doing research psychology, pushing time until they get to clinical or counseling or whatever. What can you say to those people, and just to give them hope, and where can they go? What can they do?
Yeah, I think for me, I think it's for people to identify their area of interest. Like I'm saying, research psychology is very broad. And you've alluded to perhaps why research psychology is not that attractive, because what universities have done is that they've capacitated every other field and every other professional with research skills. But what I have found is that there's a lot of clinicians and people who, yes, they've done a research module, they've done some sort of research, but they're not really interested in doing research. So they still need assistance. And this is where research psychologists can come in as research consultants, is that you can then consult with various professionals. You just need to identify your field, because then you need to know, you can't just have a data set and numbers and run statistics and give it over to someone else. You need to understand the field to be able to make sense of the constructs that are being measured, so that you can then give recommendations that are well informed. So research psychologists can become research consultants, and I know a number of them who have gone through our internship at the Military Psychological Institute, who have opened up their own research consultancies. There are those that are working in higher education. They become lecturers, become professors, and they work in that field. There are those as well who go into market research. Because sometimes, unfortunately, because there's not a lot of sectors that employ specifically research psychologists, they will employ a researcher, but not specifically research psychologists. So then a lot of the research psychologists end up going into market research. But there's a lot of other research institutes that our researchers end up going to, like your HSRC, your what is it, Human Sciences Research Council, your Medical Research Council. They end up there doing all sorts of research. So there's, you know what, I don't know, like I just think that the field is broad. There's a lot that people can do. They just need to identify their niche. What is it that you are interested in? There are those that are in psychology, not psychology, in education, who are doing education-related research. And I'm not sure if, I'm not sure if we are perhaps educated enough to know just how broad we can go in as researchers. I know someone who was doing nursing at some point, and then they decided they really want to do research psychology. They did their internship with us, and then they went and worked, and they are currently working in health psychology, and doing a lot of health related research. So it really is broad.
Yeah. No, I totally agree, and I don't dispute that. I think if there's something that I'm totally in agreement with regarding research psychology, is that it's a very broad field, and but I think what I've noted is that it doesn't get enough recognition and exposure. So at the end of the day, there's not a lot of posts aligned to it, and I think the biggest issue is when one thing about the high level of unemployment and lack of positions. Now we speak about careers that are in demand, careers that are not in demand, and all of that. I think that's where the concern is coming up. I do agree with you. Consultancy is one of them. Actually, in the past, I used to see a lot of tenders that actually required research. And I saw that it's a field that is actually a niche area for somebody with research psychology. I don't know much about the field of market research. I know it's a popular field. It's a popular field because almost every organization, every company, they want to, get into that particular field for advertising and all of that. I totally agree with that. But obviously, and that's why I have you here, because I really want people who want to follow the field to know what options are available out there. You mentioned that there are 5 institutes that are registered with HPSCA. I don't know if I won't be putting you on the spot. Do you know them off by head? Which institute are this? Because, some of the ones I know, I'm not quite sure whether they're registered or not, for somebody who might want to register as a research psychologist.
The universities.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I do know them. It's the University of Pretoria, University of the Witwatersrand, University of the Western Cape, University of KwaZulu-Natal, as well as Northwest University.
Is UCT not registered?
No, their program is not registered.
Is it? I know also SMU, ours is not registered. Yeah. Okay, so basically these are the only 5, at least in your knowledge, that
Yes,
are registered with HPSCA.
yes.
And I'm just asking you this, putting you also on the spot. If somebody has done research psychology academic, is there a way, and I know I'm asking you HPSCA related things, is there a way they can branch to register with HPSCA, or will they have to do a particular module? And I'm asking this maybe empathetically, so for people who have done it, in a sense that I don't know what are the components in terms of the requirements. I know with us, counseling, clinical and industrial and all that, there will be requirements in terms of certain projects, clients and whatever that we will have done. I assume research is research. So is there a way somebody can switch from research academic to register with HPSCA? Do you know about that? If the
No,
possibility,
as far as I know, you will have to go and redo your master's.
yo,
It's like you were saying that with with your clinical, your educational, industrial, you must be in a registered program. So when we do our masters, we do it, and when we start with the masters, we have to register with the HPCSA for them to say, yes, we have endorsed that particular program. And so there's no way that you can just branch out and then go and do your internship when you haven't done an academic or professional program that would allow you to go and do your internship and then be registered. So it really follows the same path. And I'm not sure where the confusion comes in. I think maybe the confusion comes in with the fact that we are research psychologists. At the at the very at the very core, we are psychologists. And we cannot then just go and do research and say, yeah, but we've done some undergrad psychology module, so we can combine that research and that undergrad degree and call ourselves research psychologists. At the very core, we do psychology. Like I'm saying, like I said earlier on, is like some people would go and do a BA in psychology and do an honors in psychology. And where we branch off with our clinical and counseling colleagues, for example, I know the education and industrial psychologists follow a slightly different path. But with the clinicals, the counseling, the neuropsychology, where we branch off really is at masters. So at the core, we are psychologists. And then we add, so our specialization is in research instead of in counseling or in clinical or neuro.
I like that. At the core, you are a psychologist.
Yeah,
So you must not think you are just researchers.
Specialized in research.
Okay.
I think that's the major difference between a research psychologist and a researcher. Because a researcher could just have learned research methods and they know how to apply those research methods. But are they coming in? Because you could come as a researcher coming from a sociological perspective because you are a sociologist, or you coming in from an economic perspective because you are an economist, and we come in from the psychological perspective because we are psychologists.
Super. No, well said. Okay, super then. Now let me get into this part. And if just to help somebody who wants to get into the field and want to know the difference. And I don't know if you remember this. I think you are like me. Some of the things you might have forgot them. Do you remember what was the process to get into your master's? At the moment, I'm busy with this interview because I'm trying to help people to get into masters.
Yes.
And I know there's a demand to get into masters. There's a process, there's a selection week. Do you still remember how was the selection process to your masters? Maybe for somebody who might apply somewhere, Will they give you a document, do a research analysis? What happens at your selection?
Yeah. So at the selection for masters, I still remember it very well. It's like
Wow,
it
that's
just happened
great.
like
That's great.
yesterday. So we had to write a research proposal. And
Okay.
then I think then they sift through those research proposals, and then you have to come and you present your proposal, why you want to do it.
Wow.
Then they want to see if you've got the necessary research background, so they don't have to
Wow.
start from scratch. So yeah, so that was our process. I'm not sure how other institutions work and what their processes are, but I know one other institution that I've helped in terms of the master's selection. They also put through a proposal. They do like a focus group interviews. There, I think they just really just checking to see if the individual fit into the context. So yeah, and then we also have an interview. So you go there, there's a panel of interviewers, and now you must go and defend your study and also just then go through the normal interview process.
Oh, okay, super. So where you did your proposal, I'm just trying to form a picture of the process. So you come, you do it beforehand. Do they give you a topic or a niche area, or you just choose whatever and make a
Yeah,
proposal?
you just choose. You choose what you are interested in. Preferably, you choose something that you would like to work on. But what I advise people who want to go into masters is that you actually go and check the university that you plan to study with. Go and check what the institution, what the various lecturers are doing, and see if you can maybe almost frame your interest around the interest of what the institution is already doing. Because what usually then happens is that you are interested in maybe neuropsychology, but in that department, no one is doing neuropsychology. So you're interested in doing research in neuropsychology, but no one can actually supervise you. And then you end up doing something that you're not really interested in. So I would advise prospective master's students to actually go and check what the various lecturers, what their interests are, and then you take your interest and somehow um, bring it within that framework of what the institution is doing.
Awesome, awesome. And you also spoke about they will question you on what you are presenting. Is it similar to the only image I have is when you are making a defense proposal where there's a panel in front of you, PowerPoint presentation. When you finish, while you are standing, they pose all the questions on you. Is it the process that you're explaining that you followed?
Yes, it's very similar. It's very similar to the proposal defense for your PhD. But I think it's at a slightly scaled down level because they understand that you haven't mastered research yet, but they want to see if you've got the basic foundation of research. So you cannot be talking about quantitative methods and you're going to go and do interviews, for example, because then it shows this person doesn't really understand qualitative and quantitative. The basics are not in place.
No, true that. I want to bring this to conclusion, but before I do that, you shared something about your PhD that it was not in research psychology, but in education. I have
Yes,
that correct.
yes.
What was the reason not to do it in research psychology, and you chose education? Was there strategic move about it? Was there
Uh,
specific reason?
yeah. I've always been interested in psychology. So I've fallen in love with with the defense force, né? I've fallen in love with the defense force, but I've always been interested in education. And I remember very well when I went for my interview for the internship. I told them in the next 5 years I'll be working in education because that's where I want to work, and that's where my interest is at. And I think for me, getting a PhD in psychology doesn't necessarily make you a super psychologist, because you've already specialized at
You are
most.
already a psychologist.
So getting that and what for me, what I wanted to do was to incorporate a lot of the educational elements, to look at education. uh, yes, I'm still bringing in my psychology, so yes, I'm still bringing in psychological theory, but I wanted to focus more on education rather than just looking at psychology.
No, awesome, awesome. And are there any plans to uh, leave military and defense and go somewhere else in higher education? I hope your line manager is not watching. If he's on our channel, he'll see this one day, but I hope he's not following our channel.
Look, at this point, no. At
Yeah,
this point,
I think it's a good answer from an HR perspective.
At this point, no. Like I'm saying, I've really fallen in love with the department, and I hope to make a contribution. And at this point, I feel like I can still contribute some more. And I think once I've contributed and I think I've reached the maximum that I can contribute, then of course I've got many other interests.
I get that. I get that. Now, for somebody, whether an undergraduate out there listening to this and have never heard of research psychology, beside maybe one paragraph in their manual, what do you say is a research psychology field? Just to explain it to a first year, second year, third year student who might want to follow in your footsteps so that they can gain understanding of what it is in particular.
Yeah. Okay. So the way I can put it is that it's a field where you can, so you use scientific methods because we are social scientists. So we use these scientific methods to explore questions, to test hypotheses about human behavior, how people are acting, how they are feeling, their thoughts, their cognition, their performance under different circumstances in various roles. So that's really what research psychology is. It's almost just being inquisitive about the human, wanting to know, why does someone do what they do? Why do they act in the manner that they act? And so I think that would almost be the core. And depending on the field that you then work in, so if you are working in a clinical setting, for example, one of the things that you could possibly be looking at is, why do some therapies work for some people and not for others? So you want to research into that. So why does, for example, psychotherapy or CBT work for some clients and not for others? And what is it that we can do? So what sort of individuals would this particular therapy work for? So depending really on the field, it's really just an inquisitiveness about the human, and wanting to know how humans do what they do and why they do what they do.
Wow. That sounds interesting. I've been actually heard psychologists speak about comparison of different therapeutic intervention. Your work is nice. I like that. Dr. Nondumiso Machimana, thank you so much, ma'am. I really appreciate it. But Doc, one last question. And you said you did theology, so I want you to just speak the truth in front of God. There are many students now, others have been rejected for masters several times. They are now fishing around and trying to find out what they can do as an alternative. In front of God, will you recruit them, encourage them to consider becoming research psychologists? And if so, why? They are many, they are out there. I know now, they are very stranded now. They want to know. Research is not even an option. This one is not an option at all. But I want to hear it from you, somebody with a 10 years experience in the field. Will you recommend them to follow or consider this as another option, a career option, and why will you do that?
Yes, I would definitely encourage people to consider research psychology, but I must say you must love research. I think if you don't enjoy research, you are going to be frustrated in this field because you literally, I think, depending on what you actually do from day to day, you might have to sit behind a computer day in and day out. So you must love what you are doing. You must enjoy the field that you've chosen. But I can assure you, research is very interesting. Like I said, you can work in various sectors. So if you are perhaps interested in working with children, you want to advocate for children, you can work as a research psychologist in advocating for children. And then you pick a specific discipline or a sub-discipline within working with kids. So for me, I would definitely recommend research, and I think it's a great skill to have, regardless of where you go. So if you do decide, oh well, I want to become an educational psychologist, uh, research comes in handy. It's a skill that cuts across all fields. And that's why for me, I would definitely recommend research psychology, but it's not an easy field to also get into. We, just like I said, that we do have a selection process where they screen you, and in our class, for example, in our master's class, we were only 7. And in other institutions, there's only like 3. Yes, there's multiple people that actually apply, but not everyone gets in. So it's not, I think people tend to think, oh, like I'll just try out research psychology until I can find something else. It's not necessarily an easy field to get into.
I totally agree. I think masters generally is difficult to get into, and I like that it cuts across every field. So it will never be a waste even to do it and later realize maybe that's not for you. But I think what you said is very important when you said you must love it. You must love research. And actually, when you said that, I remembered all the people I know who always tell me how difficult research is, how confusing it is. What can you tell them? Because most people think research is just a lot of confusion.
It's not. It really is. Research is not confusing at all. It, it follows a process. And once you know the process, then really you can tweak it here and there. Research is not difficult. It really is systematic. It really follows a set of rules. And once you know those rules, it's like a formula. Once you know the formula, it doesn't matter what numbers they give you. You'll be able to take those numbers and input them into the formula and then get your result. And that's how I think of research. That research has these steps, it has this formula. So long as you know what that formula is, you are then able to tweak it, adjust it, change it to fit the context in which you are working in. And like I was saying, is a lot of people stay away from research because they have a phobia for the numbers and they have a phobia for statistics. And these days, you don't have to remember all those formulas. You really need to just put your information on a statistical package. You click, it runs the analysis for you, it gives you the output. You must just be able to interpret the output. So it really is very easy. And when I think of statistics as well, it's about adding and subtracting. That's what it's about, really. Because what is a correlation? What is a t-test? And let me not get too technical, but you are really just adding up numbers. It's just that you adding up a lot of numbers and doing a couple of things with those numbers and getting a result. So it really is not. Don't fear the numbers. And if you do get into a position where you really do enjoy, perhaps you do enjoy research, but you still fear the numbers, remember there's statisticians. So you can still take your data to a statistician, they run the analysis for you, and then you must be able to then interpret that output.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, no, it's very clear that you are hearing from a doctor in research. And whoever is watching, I must tell them they must not fear the numbers.
No.
Research is systematic. It's like a formula. If you know the formula, it does not matter what number they give you. You will be able to put it in and get the correct output. I think that's the best summary of it. And thank you so much. I really appreciate your explanation and taking us through the process of what a research psychologist is all about. Nondumiso Machimana. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. Is there anything that you wanted to share, maybe that I have not touched on, maybe for any aspiring psychologist in research or any student about to go for their selection in a few months from now? Anything that you might want to share before we close?
Yeah, I would advise the students to reach out to research psychologists and to find out from them what they do, because we are so diverse, and what I've spoken about is perhaps not even half of what our research psychologists are up to in the field. So really reach out to various psychologists, research psychologists, and find out from them what it is that they do. There's mentorship programs that are on offer. I'm actually a mentor currently with one institution, and like it's very nice to be able to share my experience and actually guide students as to where they can go and like how they can prepare themselves either for the master's selection or for the master's internship or research internship, I mean.
Thank you so much. When I put your video, I usually copy the person I've interviewed. Can the students or whoever watch it connect with you on LinkedIn? Are you open for that?
Yes, I'm definitely open for that. I love that type of thing. I love that type of thing. Yeah, I think maybe that's why I like education. I think maybe I'm a teacher at heart.
Yeah. Look, the way you explain it, I think you are. I think you really help one to understand the process. And you've basically just simplified it, you know. And maybe also because of your experience being in the field for a long time, I think for anybody watching, it should be clear what research is all about. And I think you've given different examples and different context where one can work. Are there any specifics about how they should contact you? Every time I interview people, they say, no, they must not just come and say, help me with this. They must introduce themselves, tell them exactly what they want. I usually get this on LinkedIn. Hey, Dr. T, I saw your video. Help me with this assignment.
No, I'm not. I'm not availing myself to help students with assignments. I've got way too much on my plate to avail myself of. But I can advise just in terms of research psychology if they want to know more about the field and where research psychologists end up. Yeah,
Awesome, awesome.
and they must yes, they must introduce themselves and get to the point.
I get
When
there.
someone says hi, I ignore them. I really do. I ignore a hi. I
They
ignore
must
it.
not beat around the. No, no, I get that, and I think to be fair enough, even me, I get confused when somebody say hi. I want me to say hi to, how are you doing? How's the day? The day's fine, and you until
No, get to
the
the
person
point.
must get to
Get
the
to the point.
point. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
no, no.
cut to the chase.
No, I totally agree. But no, thank you so much, Dr. Nondumiso Machimana. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and I'm hoping soon we might one day just do a follow-up interview just to speak about research in particular. I've got a lot of students in masters, in PhD, busy with research who need help just understanding the constructs. So maybe one day I'll keep in touch with you. Maybe we can just keep in touch and have a video on that.
Okay. No, I'm open.
Super then. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of the day.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for inviting me.
It's a
Um,
pleasure.